Welcome to my channel, English Pulse. I am Ariel, and today I want to talk about a problem that quietly destroys the confidence of many English learners. You read English, you understand the page, you feel happy for a moment, but after a few hours, the words disappear. Then, when you try to speak, your mind becomes empty. You know you learned something, but you cannot bring it back. And this is where many learners blame themselves. They say, "My memory is weak. My brain is slow. English is not for me." But listen carefully. The problem is not your memory. The problem is the way you read, the way you store information, and the way you try to use English after reading. In this video, I will teach you how your brain remembers English, why you forget, what you read, and how to make words, sentences, and ideas stay longer in your mind. Until the end, because the final lesson will give you the complete system that can change the way you read. English forever. Subscribe to English Pulse, and let's begin. Chapter 1. Read slowly and understand the meaning. Have you ever read an English story, a short article, or a page from a book, and then forgotten most of it a few minutes later? If this has happened to you, don't worry. You are not alone. Many English learners have the same problem. They read many words, but the words do not stay in their minds. They understand the story while reading, but later they cannot remember what they read. Today, I want to show you that remembering English is not only about having a good memory. It is about learning in the right way. When you read with attention, connect new words to your life, repeat what you learn, review it at the right time. Your memory becomes stronger. So let's begin this journey together. First, let me tell you a simple story. When I was learning English, I loved reading. I thought reading many pages would make my English better. So I opened English books and read for a long time. Sometimes I read 10 pages. Sometimes I read 20 pages. I felt proud because I had finished many pages. But later, when someone asked me what I had read, I could remember only a few things. I knew I had read the words, but the information was not clear in my mind. I felt confused. I thought maybe my memory was bad. Maybe I was not good at English. But then, I learned something important. Reading more does not always mean remembering more. Sometimes reading less, but reading carefully, can help you remember much more. I started slowing down. I started thinking about what I was reading. I asked myself simple questions. What happened? Who was there? What was the main idea? What new words did I learn? These small questions changed the way I read. The first important tip is to read slowly. Many learners think they must read English very fast. Means good English. But if you read too quickly, your brain may see the words without really understanding them. You may move your eyes from one sentence to another, but your mind may not connect with the meaning. When you read slowly, you give your brain time to understand the words and the ideas. You do not need to stop after every word. Just slow down enough to understand the meaning. For example, imagine you are reading this sentence. Tom woke up early because he had an important meeting. Do not just look at the sentence and move on. Think about it. Tom woke up early. Why? Because he had an important meeting. Now imagine Tom getting out of bed in the morning. When you create a small picture in your mind, the sentence becomes easier to remember. Your brain is not only seeing words, it is creating a meaning. Another important tip is to understand the main idea. You do not need to remember every single word in a story. Sometimes learners become worried because they forget small details. They think they have failed. But that is not true. If you read a story about a boy who wanted to learn English, you should first remember that the boy wanted to improve his English and worked hard every day. Later, you can remember smaller details. The main idea gives your brain a strong place to keep the information. Think of it like a tree. The main idea is the trunk, and the small details are the branches. If the trunk is strong, it is easier to connect the branches. One of the best ways to remember what you read is to stop and tell yourself what happened. You can do this after one paragraph, one page, or one short section. Close the book for a moment and ask yourself, what did I just read? Then try to explain it using simple English. You do not need perfect English. You can say, this paragraph is about a man who went to the market. He wanted to buy some food. He met his friend there. That is enough. When you explain something from memory, your brain works harder than when you simply read it. Again, this is a powerful way to make information stronger in your mind. I remember doing this with simple stories. I would read one short paragraph and then close the book. At first, I could remember only one sentence. Sometimes I forgot almost everything. But I did not become frustrated. I tried again. I read the paragraph one more time and then closed the book. Slowly, I could remember more. After some time, I could explain the whole paragraph in my own words. This practice helped me understand that memory becomes stronger when we use it. Reading gives information to your brain, but remembering asks your brain to bring that information back. That action makes the memory stronger. Another helpful tip is to connect new information with something you already know. Our brains remember things better when they have a connection. Imagine you read the word journey. If you only look at the meaning, you may forget it later. But if you connect it to your own life, it can become easier to remember. You can think, my English journey is difficult, but I am learning every day. Now the word has a personal meaning. You are not only learning a word, you are connecting the word to your own experience. This makes it more meaningful. You can do the same thing with sentences. If you read, Sarah was nervous before her first English class. Think about a time when you felt nervous. Maybe you remember your first day at school. Maybe you remember talking to someone in English for the first time. Connect the story to your own experience. When you create this connection, the information becomes more personal. Personal information is often easier to remember because it has meaning for you. Another powerful method is repetition. If you read something only one time, you may forget it. This is normal. Your brain needs to see important information more than once. But repetition does not mean reading the same page 10 times without thinking. You can repeat in different ways. Read the story once, Then, explain it aloud. Later, read it again. Then write a few sentences about it. The next day, try to remember the story without looking at the book. Each time, you are meeting the information in a different way. This can help it stay in your memory. For example, suppose you learn the sentence, "I decided to practice English every morning." First, read it. Then say it aloud. Then make your own sentence, "I decided to read English every evening." Later, try to remember the original sentence. You can also write it in your notebook. The Depreciation. Now the sentence has been used in several ways. You saw it, heard it, spoke it, wrote it, and connected it to your own life. This gives your brain more chances to remember it. You should also avoid trying to remember too much at one time. This is a common mistake. A learner may open a book and decide to learn 50 new words in one day. At first, this feels exciting, but after a short time, the brain becomes tired. Many words become mixed together. The learner feels frustrated and thinks, "I cannot remember English." The problem is not always the learner. The problem may be the amount of information. Start small. Learn 5 useful words. Read 1 short story. Remember the main idea. Use the new words in simple sentences. Small steps can produce strong results. When I started using this method, I stopped worrying about how many pages I could finish. Instead, I asked myself how much I could remember. This changed everything. Reading 5 pages and remembering the main ideas was more useful than reading 20 pages and forgetting everything. I began to enjoy reading more because I was not rushing. I could stop, think, imagine, repeat, and connect. English became less like a test and more like a conversation with my own mind. Another useful habit is to highlight or write down only important words and ideas. Do not highlight every sentence. If everything is important, nothing feels important. Choose a few words that you really want to remember. Write them in a small notebook. For each word, write a simple meaning in 1 sentence. You can also write why the word is useful for you. For example, if you learn the word improve, you can write, "I want to improve my English." This simple sentence is connected to your real goal, so the word becomes easier to remember. It is also helpful to read the same story more than once. The first time, focus on understanding. The second time, notice new words. The third time, try to remember the details. You may be surprised by how much easier the story feels on the second reading. The words that looked difficult before may now feel familiar. The story becomes clearer. This is not wasted time. Rereading is useful because each reading can have a different purpose. So, if you want to remember more of what you read in English, do not simply read more. Read with attention. Slow down. Understand the main idea. Stop and remember what you read. Explain it in your own words. Connect new words to your life. Repeat important sentences. Learn a small amount at a time. Write down useful words and read important stories again. These simple habits can make a big difference. Remember, your goal is not to have a perfect memory. Your goal is to give your brain good information again and again. You do not need to remember every word. You need to understand, use, and review the words that matter. Every time you remember something you read, your confidence grows. Every time you use a new word, it becomes more familiar. Every time you return to an old story, you discover something new. Chapter 2. Ask questions while you read. We are going to continue our journey and talk about another very powerful way to remember what you read in English. This method is simple, but it can change the way you read. The method is asking questions while you read. Many English learners read a sentence, understand it, and then move to the next sentence. They do not stop to think, they simply keep reading. But when you ask questions, your brain becomes active. You are not only looking at English words, you are searching for answers. You are thinking about the story. You are making connections. This makes reading more interesting, and it can help you remember much more. Let me give you a simple example. Imagine you are reading a short story about a man named David. The story says, David woke up early in the morning. He looked outside and saw dark clouds. He quickly took his umbrella and left the house. If you simply read these sentences, you may understand them. But after reading, ask yourself some questions. Who woke up early? What did David see? Why did he take an umbrella? Where was he going? These questions make your brain go back to the information. You are not just reading the words. You are searching your memory for the answers. This small action can make a big difference. When I first started using questions while reading, I noticed something interesting. I could remember stories much better. Before that, I often read a page and then forgot what I had just read. But when I started asking questions, my mind stayed focused. I wanted to know the answers. Sometimes I even asked questions before reading the next sentence. I became curious. I wanted to discover what happened next. Reading became more like a conversation. The book was giving me information, and my mind was asking questions. You can start with very simple questions. You do not need difficult English. You can ask who, what, where, when, why, and how. These 6 question words are very useful. If you are reading about a person, ask who the person is. If you are reading about an action, ask what happened. If you are reading about a place, ask where it happened. If you are reading about time, ask when it happened. If you can understand the reason, ask why it happened. And if you want to understand the way something happened, ask how it happened. These questions can help you understand almost any simple story. For example, read. Anna went to the library after school because she needed a book for her English class. You can ask, who went to the library? The answer is Anna. Then ask, where did Anna go? The answer is the library. Ask, when did she go? After school. Ask, why did she go? Because she needed a book for her English class. Simple. Now you have repeated the important information several times, without simply reading the sentence again and again. Your brain is working with the information. That makes it easier to remember. Another useful idea is to ask yourself what you think will happen next. This is called making a prediction. You do not need to be correct. The purpose is to make your brain think. Imagine you are reading a story about a boy walking through a forest. Suddenly, he hears a strange sound behind him. Stop there and ask yourself, what will happen next? Maybe you think he will run. Maybe he will turn around. Maybe he will see an animal. It does not matter if your prediction is wrong. What matters is that your brain becomes curious. When you continue reading, you will want to discover what really happens. This attention can help you remember the story. I remember doing this with simple English stories. Sometimes I stopped in the middle of a story and tried to guess the ending. I made funny predictions. Sometimes I was completely wrong. But I enjoyed it. When I discovered what really happened, I remembered the story because I had already thought about it. The story became more personal. It was no longer just something I was reading. It was something I was thinking about. You can also ask questions about the characters. ZPCs. If you are reading a story, ask yourself, how does this person feel? Why is this person happy? Why is this person sad? What does this person want? What problem does this person have? These questions help you understand the story more deeply. They also give you useful English practice. You learn words for feelings, actions, problems, and ideas. You are learning vocabulary while also understanding the story. For example, suppose you read, James sat alone on a bench. He looked at his phone again and again. He was waiting for his friend, but his friend was late. You can ask, how does James feel? Maybe he feels worried, bored, or impatient. Then ask, why does he keep looking at his phone? Because he is waiting for his friend. Remember the details. These later, if someone asks you about the story, you can easily explain it because you thought about the character and his feelings. Questions can also help you remember new vocabulary. When you see a new word, do not only look at its translation. Ask questions about the word. What does this word mean? How is it used? Can I make a sentence with it? Where did I see it? Have I heard it before? Can I connect it to something in my life? These questions make the word more meaningful. If you only look at the meaning and move on, you may forget it quickly. But if you think about the word and use it, you have a better chance of remembering it. Imagine you read the word crowded. Maybe you do not know it. You look at the meaning and learn that it describes a place with many people. Now ask yourself, have I ever been somewhere crowded? Maybe you remember a busy market. You can make a sentence, the market was crowded yesterday. Now the word has a picture in your mind. You have connected the word to a real experience. This can make it easier to remember. Another powerful question is, why is this important? This question helps you focus on useful information. Not every sentence in a book has the same importance. Some sentences give the main idea. Some give small details. When you ask why something is important, you start to notice the information that matters most. This is especially useful when you are reading longer texts. Instead of trying to remember everything, you can find the important ideas. For example, imagine you are reading a story about a woman who wants to improve her English. She starts practicing for 10 minutes every morning. At first, she makes many mistakes. After several months, she becomes more confident. The important idea may not be every small detail about her mornings. The important idea is that regular practice helped her improve. When you ask, "What is the most important thing here?" you can find the main lesson of the story. You can also ask yourself, "Can I explain this to someone else?" This is one of my favorite questions. After reading a paragraph, imagine that your friend asks you, "What did you just read? Can you explain it in simple English?" If you can, that is a good sign. If you cannot, go back and read the paragraph again. Do not feel bad. You are training your brain. Each time you try to explain something, you become better at understanding and remembering it. You can even pretend that you are the teacher. Imagine you are teaching the story to another English learner. Tell the story in your own words. You might say, "This story is about a girl named Maria. She wanted to learn English, so she started reading every day. At first, she did not understand many words, but she continued. Slowly, her English improved." You do not need perfect grammar. The goal is to remember the meaning. Another helpful question is, how does this connect to my life? This question can make English much more personal. Suppose you read a sentence about someone waking up early to study English. Ask yourself, do I study English in the morning? Maybe you do not. Maybe you prefer studying at night. You can make your own sentence. I study English before I go to sleep. Now you are connecting the story to your life. This personal connection makes the English more useful and easier to remember. You should also ask questions before you start reading. Look at the title of the story and think about what it might be about. If the title is a difficult day at work, ask yourself, what might happen? Who might have a difficult day? What kind of problem could happen? Then start reading. Now your brain has a reason to look for information. You are reading with a purpose. This is much better than opening a book and simply moving your eyes across the page. Before you begin, give your brain a small job. Tell yourself, I want to discover what this story is about. When your brain has a question, it naturally looks for an answer. This can increase your attention and help you remember what you read. You can also ask questions after finishing a story. Ask yourself, what was the story about? Who were the main people? What was the problem? How was the problem solved? What did I learn? What new words did I see? What was my favorite part? These questions create a simple review. You do not need to open the book again immediately. Try to answer from memory first. This gives your brain practice. If you cannot remember an answer, do not worry. Look back at the story and find it. Then close the book and try again. This process is very useful. You are teaching your brain that the information is important. You are also learning how to find information when you forget it. Remember that the purpose of questions is not to make reading difficult. Questions should make reading easier and more interesting. Start with 2 or 3 questions. You do not need to ask 20 questions for every paragraph. If you are a beginner, keep it simple. Ask who, what, and why. Later, you can ask deeper questions. The important thing is to make your brain active. You can even keep a small question. Notebook. Write the title of the story at the top. Under it, write 3 questions. Then, read the story and answer the questions. For example, If the story is called My First Day in London, your questions could be, why did the person go to London? What happened on the first day? And how did the person feel? After reading, answer the questions using simple English. This is a very easy activity, but it can help you remember much more. The most important thing to remember is this: do not read English like you are only looking at words. Read like you are trying to understand a message. Ask questions. Be curious. Make predictions. Think about the characters. Think about new words. You connect the story to your life. When your brain becomes active, reading becomes more powerful. So today, when you read something in English, try this simple method. Before reading, ask yourself what you think the text will be about. Sure. While reading, ask who, what, where, when, why, and how. After reading, close the book and ask yourself what you remember. Then explain the story in your own simple English. You may be surprised by how much more you can remember. Remember, you do not need a perfect memory to learn English. You need an active mind and a good reading habit. Every question you ask is another opportunity to understand. Every answer you remember is another small step toward better English. Keep practicing, keep asking questions, and keep believing in yourself. Chapter 3. Use your own words to remember. You do not need to use difficult English. You simply need to say what you remember in your own simple way. This method can help you understand English better, remember new words, and become more confident when speaking. Many learners spend a lot of time reading, but they do not spend enough time using what they read. Reading gives you information, but using that information helps your brain keep it. Let me tell you a simple story. When I was learning English, I used to read short stories every day. I thought I was doing a great job because I was reading many pages. But sometimes, when I finished a story, I could not explain what had happened. I understood the sentences while I was looking at the book, but when I closed the book, it disappeared from my mind. I became frustrated. Then I started doing something different. After every short section, I closed the book and tried to tell the story in my own words. At first, it was difficult. I could remember only a few things. Sometimes I made grammar mistakes. Sometimes I forgot important details. But I kept practicing. Slowly, I became better. I could remember more of the story, and I could explain it more easily. I learned that using my own words was much more powerful than simply reading the same sentences again. When you read a sentence in English, you may understand it because the words are right in front of you. But understanding while looking at the page is different from remembering. Without looking at the page, imagine that you read, Michael went to the store because he needed some food for dinner. When you see the sentence, it may feel easy. But now close the book and say the idea in your own words. You might say, Michael went shopping because he needed food. You did not repeat the exact sentence, but you remembered the important meaning. That is what we want. We want your brain to understand the message, not simply memorize a group of words. Using your own words is especially helpful for English learners because it gives you speaking practice at the same time. You are reading, remembering, thinking, and speaking. These skills work together. You may read a short story about a woman who moves to a new city. After reading, close the book and say, "The woman moved to a new city. She did not know many people, so she felt lonely. Then she joined a small English class and made some new friends." You are practicing English while remembering the story. You are also learning how to connect sentences naturally. Do not worry if your English is simple. Simple English is perfect for this practice. In fact, simple English can make the activity easier and more useful. You do not need to use the same words as the writer. You can use words you already know. If the story says, "The young man was exhausted after working for many hours," you can say, "The man was very tired because he worked for a long time." The meaning is almost the same. You have changed the sentence and used your own words. This is excellent practice. Another important thing is to avoid looking at the book while you explain. If you keep looking at the sentences, your brain may simply copy them. Copy them. Close the book or look away from the screen. Then try to remember. This may feel difficult at first, but that difficulty is useful. Your brain is working to bring the information back. Every time you successfully remember something, you are strengthening your memory. If you forget, that is okay. You can open the book, look again, close it, and try one more time. I remember doing this with very short paragraphs. Sometimes I read only 3 or 4 sentences. Then I closed the book. I tried to explain what I had read. If I remembered only one sentence, I said that sentence. Then I opened the book again and looked at what I had missed. After a few minutes, I tried again. Each attempt became easier. I realized that I did not need to study for hours. A few minutes of focused practice could be very powerful. You can start this method with one paragraph. Do not begin with a whole chapter. Choose a small paragraph that you can understand. Read it slowly. Think about the meaning. Then close the book and explain it. After that, open the book and check yourself. Did you remember the main idea? Did you remember the important people? Did you remember what happened? If you forgot something, read it again. Then close the book and try again. This small process can become a very strong daily habit. You can also use this method with new vocabulary. Suppose you read a story and learn the word decide. The story says, Emma decided to study English every morning. Instead of simply writing the word and its meaning, use it in your own words. You can say, I decided to practice English every evening. Now the word is connected to your own life. You have changed the sentence, spoken it, and made it personal. This gives you a much better chance of remembering it. Another useful idea is to retell the story in a different way each time. The first time, you can give a very short summary. The second time, you can add more details. The third time, you can talk about the characters and their feelings. You can even change the story slightly and imagine what might happen next. This keeps your brain active. You are not simply repeating the same sentence. You are using the information in different ways. For example, imagine you read a story about a boy named Alex who loses his phone. First, you might say, Alex lost his phone and looked for it. That is a short summary. Later, you might say, Alex lost his phone at the park. He was worried because he needed to call his mother. He looked under the bench and finally found it near a tree. Now, you are adding details. Then you can ask yourself, what if Alex did not find the phone? Maybe you say, he would have gone home and told his mother. This kind of practice makes the story easier to remember because you are actively thinking about it. You can also pretend that you are telling the story to a friend. Imagine your friend has never read the story. How would you explain it? Start with the beginning. Tell your friend who the story is about. Then explain what happened. Talk about the problem and how it was solved. You can say, I read a story about a man named John. He wanted to find a new job. He applied to several companies, but nobody called him. Then one company invited him for an interview. He prepared carefully and finally got the job. Then, this is simple English, but it shows that you understand the story. This method is also excellent for improving your speaking confidence. Many English learners say, I understand English when I read, but I cannot speak. One reason may be that they spend much more time receiving English than producing it. They read and listen, but they do not practice creating their own sentences. Retelling what you read gives you a bridge between reading and speaking. You already know the story, so you do not need to invent everything. You only need to explain what you remember. This makes speaking practice easier. You can practice in front of a mirror if you want. Look at yourself and explain the story. You can also record your voice on your phone. Do not worry if your voice sounds strange to you. This is normal. Listen to your recording later. Ask yourself, did I explain the story clearly? Did I use simple sentences? Did I stop too much? Did I remember the main idea? You can try again after listening. This gives you a chance to improve both your memory and your speaking. Another helpful habit is to write the story in your own words. After reading, take a notebook and write 3 to 5 sentences about what you remember. Do not copy the book. Write from your memory. For example, you can write, John woke up late. He missed the bus. He decided to walk to work. On the way, he met his old friend. This small writing exercise can make the story stronger in your mind. Later, you can look at your writing and compare it with the original story. You may notice that your version is not exactly the same as the original. That is completely fine. The goal is not to become a copy machine. The goal is to understand the message and express it yourself. Sometimes your sentence may be shorter. Sometimes you may use different words. Sometimes you may forget a small detail. That does not mean you failed. If you can explain the main idea, you are learning. One mistake learners often make is trying to remember every word. Exactly. This can make reading stressful. Imagine trying to remember an entire paragraph word for word. You may spend a lot of energy trying to remember the exact order of the words. Instead, remember the meaning first. Once you understand the meaning, the words can become easier to learn naturally. You can choose a few important phrases to remember exactly, but you do not need to memorize every sentence. Another mistake is immediately checking the translation after every sentence. A dictionary can be helpful, but try to understand the general meaning first. If you understand most of the story, continue reading. If one word is not important, you may be able to guess its meaning from the context. Then later, you can check the word. This helps you become more independent. Your brain learns to understand English without always depending on translation. Using context is another important part of remembering. Imagine you see the word hungry in a story. The sentence says, Tom had not eaten all day, so he was very hungry. Even if you already know the word, connect it with the situation. Tom did not eat. His stomach was empty. He wanted food. Now the word has a story around it. When you meet the word again, you may remember the situation. This is much stronger than remembering only a translation. You can also create a small mental picture while retelling. If the story says a girl is walking through a beautiful garden, imagine the garden. Maybe you see green trees, flowers, and a small path. When you retell the story, remember the picture. Pictures can help you remember words and events. You do not need to be an artist. Your imagination is enough. Another powerful activity is to change the point of view. Suppose the story is about a man named David. After reading it, retell the story as if you were David. Instead of saying, David went to the market, say, I went to the market. This makes the story feel more personal. You can also retell it from another character's point of view. This may feel like a game, but it gives you more opportunities to use the English you learned. You can even make the story shorter. If you read a long story, try to explain it in 3 sentences. Then try to explain it in 1 sentence. This teaches your brain to find the most important information. For example, a long story may be about a woman who loses her job, feels afraid, starts learning a new skill, finds a new opportunity, and eventually gets a better job. In 1 sentence, you might say, a woman lost her job, learned a new skill, and found a better opportunity. That 1 sentence contains the main idea. After you become comfortable with short summaries, try longer retellings. You can start with 1 minute. Set a timer and talk about what you read for 1 minute. The next day, try 2 minutes. Later, try 3 minutes. This is a simple way to combine memory and speaking practice. You will notice that your sentences become easier because you are training your brain to organize ideas in English. Remember, you do not need to be perfect. If you forget a word, use another word. If you make a grammar mistake, keep talking. If you forget a detail, continue with the part you remember. The goal is communication and memory, not perfection. Every time you explain something without looking at the book, you are becoming more independent. You can make this a daily habit. Choose a short English story every day. Read 1 small section. Close the book. Tell yourself what happened. Then check the story. Repeat if necessary. Write 3 sentences in your notebook. The whole activity can take only 10 or 15 minutes, but if you do it every day, you can make a big difference in your English. Doing this for 30 days. On the first day, maybe you can remember only 2 sentences. On the 10th day, maybe you can explain a whole paragraph. On the 20th day, you may be able to retell a short story easily. On the 30th day, you may notice that your brain is becoming faster at remembering English. This is how small daily habits create big changes. So today, remember this simple rule: read, close, remember, and explain. Read the English. Close the book. Remember what you can. Then explain it in your own words. Own word. This simple process can help you remember more, speak better, and understand English more deeply. You do not need complicated techniques. You need regular practice. Your English journey is not about remembering every word perfectly. It is about making English part of your mind. When you use your own words, you take the English from the page and make it yours. That is a powerful moment. A word that once belonged to the book becomes a word you can use. A sentence that once looked difficult becomes a sentence you can say. A story that once felt unfamiliar becomes a story you can explain. So, the next time you read something in English, do not immediately close the book and move on. Stop for a moment. Ask yourself what you remember. Then tell the story in your own simple English. You may make mistakes. That is okay. Keep going. Every attempt makes your memory stronger and your English more natural. Chapter 4. Review and repeat what you learn. We are going to talk about review and repetition. If you want to remember what you read for a long time, you cannot read something once and forget about it. You need to come back to it. You need to see it again. You need to use it again. You need to repeat it in different ways. This does not mean you have to study for many hours. It means you need to review in a smart and simple way. Let me tell you a story. When I was learning English, I used to learn many new words every day. I felt very happy when I learned them. I wrote them in my notebook and thought I would remember them forever. But after a few days, I opened my notebook and discovered something surprising. Many of the words looked new again. I knew I had learned them before, but I could not remember their meanings clearly. At first, I thought something was wrong with my memory. Then I understood that I had made a simple mistake. I learned the words once, but I did not review them. I expected my brain to remember everything without seeing the information again. That does not work well. I realized that memory needs repetition. Think about learning English like planting a small seed. When you plant a seed, you cannot water it one time and then forget about it. You need to give it water again and again. You need to give it care. Slowly, the seed grows into a plant. Learning is similar. The first time you learn a word, you plant the seed. A four-bini course. When you review the word, you give the seed water. When you use the word in a sentence, you give it more care. When you see the word again in a story, the connection becomes stronger. Over time, the word becomes easier to remember. Many English learners think repetition is boring. They say, "I already know this word. Why should I read it again?" But sometimes you know something today and forget it tomorrow. This is normal. Repetition helps move information from a weak memory into a stronger memory. When you see the same word again in a different sentence, your brain gets another chance to understand it. When you use the word again, your brain gets another chance to remember it. This is why repetition is so important. You can use repetition in a very simple way. Suppose you read a short story today. You understand the story and learn 5 new words. Do not try to learn 20 or 30 words. Choose 5 useful words. Write them down. Read the story again tomorrow. Then read it again after a few days. Later, try to tell the story without looking at the book. This small review routine can help you remember much more. For example, imagine you learn the words quiet, journey, decide, careful, and improve. On the first day, you read them in a story. You learn their meanings. Then you make simple sentences. You might say, "The room is quiet. My English journey is important. I decided to study. Be careful on the road. I want to improve my English." The next day, look at the words again. Try to remember the meanings before checking your notes. Then use each word again. A few days later, test yourself again. This is much better than learning the words once and never seeing them again. One important thing is to review before you completely forget. If you wait too long, you may have to learn the information again from the beginning. But if you review regularly, the information becomes easier to remember. You can review a new story later the same day. Then review it the next day. Then review it again after a few days. You do not need to spend a long time each time. Even 5 or 10 minutes can be useful. You can create a simple review schedule. On the first day, read the story carefully. On the second day, review the important words and main idea. On the fourth day, try to explain the story without looking. On the 7th day, read the story one more time. Later, you can review it again. This simple routine gives your brain many opportunities to remember the information. You can also review without reading the entire story again. Sometimes you can simply look at the title and ask yourself what you remember. For example, if the title is My First Day at Work, close your eyes for a moment and try to remember the story. Who was the main person? What happened? What problem did the person have? How did the story end? What new words did you learn? This is a powerful type of review because you are trying to remember before looking at the answer. If you cannot remember, do not feel bad. Open the story and look at it again. Then close it and try once more. Forgetting is not proof that you are bad at English. Forgetting is part of learning. The important thing is to return to the information and practice remembering it. Every time you bring an old word or idea back into your mind, you are giving your memory another workout. You can think of your memory like a muscle. If you use a muscle regularly, it can become stronger. If you never use it, it may become weaker. Your memory also needs practice. When you try to remember a word without looking at the answer, your brain is working. When you retell a story, your brain is working. When you answer questions about an old lesson, your brain is working. These small exercises help you become better at remembering. Another useful method is to review in different ways. Do not always review by reading. One day, read the story. Another day, listen to the story. Another day, explain it aloud. Another day, write a short summary. Another day, use the new vocabulary in your own sentences. When you meet the same information in different ways, you create more connections in your mind. For example, imagine you read a story about a family visiting a beautiful village. First, you read the story. Then you listen to an audio version. Later, you tell someone what happened. Then you write 5 sentences about the visit. Finally, you use some of the new words in your own conversation. You have practiced reading, listening, speaking, and writing. The story becomes much more familiar because you have used it in several ways. Another important tip is to review Old English while learning New English. Sometimes learners only study new words. Every day they want something different. They think old lessons are finished. But old lessons are important. Little time for old material. You can spend 10 minutes learning something new and 5 minutes reviewing something old. This balance can help you continue learning without forgetting everything you learned before. I used to keep a small notebook for old words. Every week, I looked through it. I did not study every word for a long time. I simply tested myself. Humaka share surdi. I covered the meanings and tried to remember them. Some words were easy. Some words were difficult. The difficult words stayed on my review list. This helped me focus my time on the words I needed most. You can do the same with stories. Make a small list of stories you have already read. Every week, choose one old story and retell it. You may discover that you remember more than you expected. You may also notice that some sentences feel easier now. This is a sign of progress. The story that was difficult last month may feel simple today. Another good idea is to review before sleeping. Before you go to bed, take a few minutes to think about what you read during the day. You do not need to open a big book. Just remember the main idea. Think about 3 new words. Say a few sentences in your mind. For example, you might think, "Today I learned the word improve. I want to improve my English." I also read a story about a boy who moved to a new city. This short review can help you finish the day with English in your mind. You can also review in the morning. When you wake up, try to remember what you learned the day before. Before looking at your notebook, ask yourself what you can remember. This creates a simple habit. You wake up, think in English, and review yesterday's lesson. Then you can start learning something new. Another powerful method is to use questions during review. Ask yourself, what was the story about? What were the important events? What new words did I learn? Can I make a sentence with each word? Can I explain the story without looking? These questions make your review active. You are not just looking at your notes. You are using your memory. You can also create small quizzes for yourself. Write a word on one side of a piece of paper and try to remember the meaning. Or write the meaning and try to remember the English word. You can write a sentence with a missing word and choose the correct word from memory. These simple activities can make review feel like a game. I remember making little quizzes for myself. Sometimes I got many answers wrong. At first I felt disappointed, but then I understood that the wrong answers showed me what I needed to review. If I forgot a word, I knew I needed more practice with that word. This changed my attitude. I stopped seeing mistakes as failures. I started seeing them as signs that showed me where to focus. Another helpful habit is to review words in sentences. Senseis. Instead of only reviewing individual words, if you learn the word bright, do not only remember that it means full of light. Read and create sentences such as, "The room is bright." "The sun is bright today. She has a bright smile." When you see the word in different sentences, you understand how it works. This makes the word more useful and easier to remember. The same idea works with phrases. Sometimes a phrase is easier to remember than one word. Instead of learning only look, you can learn look for, look at, or look after. When you read these phrases in real sentences, you begin to understand how English works naturally. Review the whole phrase, not only one small word. Another mistake learners make is reviewing only when they feel like studying. If you review only when you have extra time, you may not review very often. It is better to create a small routine. Maybe you review English for 10 minutes after breakfast. Maybe you review before bed. Choose a time that works for you and make it a habit. When something becomes a habit, you do not have to think about it so much. Consistency is more important than long study sessions. You do not need to review for 2 hours every Sunday. If you do nothing during the rest of the week, 5 or 10 minutes every day can be much easier to maintain. Small daily actions can build strong results over time. You should also avoid reviewing too much at one time. If you have hundreds of old words, do not try to study all of them in one sitting. Choose a small group. Maybe review 10 words today. Tomorrow, review another 10. Then return to some of the older words. Keep the process simple. The goal is to remember, not to overwhelm yourself. Another great method is to connect old words with new stories. Suppose you learned the word journey last month. Today, you read a story about a person traveling to another city. When you see the word journey again, stop and remember your old lesson. You might think, I learned this word before. Now the old information is connected to the new information. This creates a stronger memory. You can also keep a words I want to remember list. Every time you find an important word in a story, add it to the list. But keep the list small. Choose words that are useful to you. Every few days, look at the list and try to make sentences. When a word becomes easy, you can remove it. Then add another useful word. This keeps your learning organized. Remember that repetition should not feel like punishment. Make it enjoyable. Read a story you like. Listen to an interesting English podcast. Watch a short English video again. Sing a song you have already heard. Repeat phrases that sound useful. If you enjoy the material, you are more likely to return to it. You can even make a challenge for yourself. Choose one short story and see how much you can remember after 1 day, 3 days, and 1 week. Write down what you remember. Then compare your answers. You may see that each review helps. This can motivate you because you can actually see your progress. There will be days when you forget a lot. That is okay. There will also be days when you remember almost everything. Both kinds of days are normal. Do not judge yourself based on 1 day. Look at your progress over weeks and months. Your goal is to become better slowly. Think about the first English story you read. Maybe you understood very little. Maybe many words were difficult. Now imagine reading that same story again after months of practice. You may understand almost everything. This is proof that learning takes time. You do not need to understand everything immediately. Review gives your brain time to grow. The most important lesson today is simple. If you want to remember what you read, return to it. Read it again. Think about it again. Talk about it again. Write about it again. Use the words again. Do not be afraid of repetition. Repetition is not a sign that you are slow. It is a part of learning. So create a simple routine. Read something today. Review it tomorrow. Test yourself after a few days. Retell it after 1 week. Keep using the important words. Slowly, the information will become more familiar. Your Mersher. You will not need to work so hard to remember it. Words that once felt new will begin to feel natural. Remember, learning English is not about filling your brain with thousands of words as quickly as possible. It is about keeping useful words and ideas in your memory. One word that you remember and use is more valuable than 10 words that you forget. One story that you understand deeply can teach you more than many pages that you quickly forget. Keep your learning simple. Read, review, repeat, use, then review again. These small actions can change the way you learn English. Chapter 5. Create pictures in your mind. We are going to talk about creating pictures in your mind. Ikori call. Biths. When you read English, do not only look at the words. Try to see the words in your mind. Imagine the people, places, objects, actions, and feelings in the story. When you create a picture, the English becomes more than words on a page. It becomes a little movie inside your mind. This can make reading more interesting and can help you remember the story and vocabulary more easily. Let me tell you a simple story. When I was learning English, I read a story about a small house near a green forest. The story said that a man lived in the house with his dog. Every morning, he opened the door, walked outside, and looked at the trees. One day, he heard a strange sound behind the house. When I read these sentences, I stopped and imagined everything. I imagined the small house. I imagined the green trees. I imagined the man opening the wooden door. I imagined the dog walking beside him. Then I imagined the man hearing a strange sound. Later, when I tried to remember the story, I could remember it very easily. I could see the house and the forest in my mind. The pictures helped me remember the English words. This is why imagination can be so useful when you are learning English. A word can be difficult to remember when it has no connection to anything. But when you connect the word to a picture, it becomes easier. Imagine you learn the word bridge. Do not only remember the meaning of the word. Imagine a bridge over a river. Imagine yourself walking across it. Maybe there are trees around the river. Maybe the sun is shining. Now the word bridge has a picture in your mind. When you see the word again, you may remember the picture, and the picture can help you remember the word. You can do this with almost every word. If you learn the word rain, imagine rain falling from the sky. Imagine yourself standing near a window and watching the drops of water. If you learn the word hungry, imagine sitting at a table and seeing a plate of food. If you learn the word beautiful, imagine a beautiful garden full of flowers. The more clearly you imagine something, the easier it can become to connect the English word with the meaning. You can also create pictures when you read complete sentences. Imagine you read, "The little boy is running through the park." Do not simply read the sentence and continue. Stop for a moment. Imagine the little boy. Imagine his clothes. Imagine him running across the green grass. Imagine the trees and flowers around him. Maybe you can hear birds singing. Now the sentence becomes a scene. When you remember the scene later, the sentence may come back to your mind more easily. I used this method many times when I was learning English. Sometimes I would close my eyes after reading a sentence and try to see the scene. At first, I thought it was a little strange. But after some practice, it became natural. When I read a story, pictures automatically appeared in my mind. This made reading more enjoyable. It also helped me remember what I had read, because I was not only remembering words. I was remembering people, places, actions, and events. Another helpful tip is to connect the story with your own experiences. Imagine you read about Lachlan going to a market. Maybe you have visited a market before. Think about your own experience. Remember the people, sounds, colors, and smells. Now connect the English story to your memory. You might think, I also went to a busy market last week. This personal connection makes the story more meaningful. For example, suppose you read, "The market was crowded and people were walking everywhere." You can imagine the market. Then remember a crowded place you have visited. Maybe you remember people talking, cars moving, and shops full of customers. Now the word crowded is connected to a real experience. The next time you see the word, you may remember that picture. You can also use emotions to remember what you read. If a story makes you happy, sad, surprised, or excited, pay attention to that feeling. Emotions can make a story more memorable. Imagine you read about a girl who finally passes her English exam after studying for many months. Maybe she feels happy and proud. Imagine her smiling and telling her family the good news. When you remember her happiness, you may also remember the story and the English words connected to it. Another good idea is to turn the story into a movie in your mind. Imagine that you are watching a short English movie. Each sentence creates another scene. If the story says, "John opened the window," imagine John opening the window. If it says, "He saw a bird on the tree," imagine the bird. If it says, the bird flew away," imagine the bird flying into the sky. You are creating a movie while reading. This can help you follow the story and remember the order of events. You do not need a perfect imagination. Even simple pictures are enough. If you read about a red car, just imagine a red car. If you read about a small room, imagine a small room. If you read about a person walking, imagine someone walking. Do not spend too much time creating perfect pictures. The purpose is simply to connect the words with meaning. Pictures can also help you remember difficult vocabulary. Suppose you learn the word umbrella. Imagine yourself standing outside on a rainy day and holding an umbrella. You do not need to translate the word into your first language every time. The picture can become the meaning. This is a powerful habit because you are training your brain to connect English directly with an idea. You can also draw simple pictures in your notebook. If you learn the word mountain, draw a mountain. If you learn river, draw a river. If you learn house, draw a small house. Your drawings do not need to be beautiful. They are only reminders. Sometimes a simple picture can help you remember a word faster than a long definition. But another useful method is to create unusual pictures. Strange and funny pictures can be very memorable. Imagine you learn the word enormous. Instead of imagining an ordinary large object, imagine an enormous apple, bigger than your house. Maybe you are standing beside it and looking up. It is funny and unusual. Because the picture is strange, you may remember the word more easily. You can also connect several new words to one picture. Imagine a story about a boy walking through a forest. You may learn the words forest, path, tree, river, bridge, and bird. Put all these words into one mental picture. Imagine the boy walking on a path between trees. He sees a river and crosses a bridge. A bird is sitting on a branch. Now the words are connected. If you remember the picture, many words can come back with it. This method is especially helpful for beginners because it reduces the need to translate every word. When you see a word, try to imagine the meaning first. For example, when you see apple, imagine an apple. When you see run, imagine someone running. When you see sleep, imagine someone sleeping. Slowly, your brain can begin to connect English words directly with ideas. Another important thing is to use your senses when you imagine. Do not only think about what you can see. If you read about a beach, imagine the sound of the waves. Imagine the warm sun. Imagine the feeling of sand under your feet. If you read about a kitchen, imagine the smell of food. These details can make the story feel more real. When a story feels real, it can become easier to remember. You may not remember every sentence, but you can remember the scene. Then the scene can help you remember the words. This is why stories are such a useful way to learn English. English. A story gives words a place, a person, an action, and a meaning. So the next time you read English, try this simple habit. Do not rush. Read one sentence, stop, imagine it, then continue. If you read a paragraph about a person walking in the rain, see the person in your mind. Imagine the rain. Imagine the wet road. Imagine the person holding an umbrella. Then close the book and try to remember the scene. You may find that you remember the paragraph more easily. Remember, you are not trying to make beautiful pictures. You are trying to make English meaningful. Words become easier to remember when they are connected to something. A picture, a feeling, a place, or a personal experience can give a word a stronger connection in your mind. You can practice this for only 10 minutes every day. Choose a short English story. Read slowly. Create pictures. Then close the story and remember what you saw. Try to describe the picture in simple English. You can say, I see a small house. There are trees behind the house. A man is standing near the door. His dog is beside him. Now you are practicing reading, imagination, memory, vocabulary, and speaking at the same time. This is a simple activity, but it can become very powerful when you do it every day. Your brain will slowly become better at connecting English with meaning. You may notice that you need less translation. You may understand stories more quickly. You may remember new words for longer. Most importantly, reading can become more enjoyable. So remember today's lesson. When you read English, don't only see words. See pictures. See people. See places. See actions. Feel the story. Connect it to your life. Turn the words into a movie in your mind. When English becomes a picture, it becomes easier to understand and remember. Chapter 6. Read, listen, and speak together. Many learners only read English with their eyes. They look at the words and move to the next sentence. But English is not only something we see. English is something we hear, say, and use. When you read a sentence, listen to it, and then say it yourself. You give your brain more ways to remember it. This can make the English stronger in your memory and can also help you become a better speaker. Let me tell you a simple story. When I was learning English, I spent a lot of time reading. I read stories, short articles, and simple books. But sometimes I noticed that I could understand a word when I saw it, but I could not understand it when someone said it. I also knew some sentences when I read them, but I felt nervous when I tried to say them. Then I started using a different method. I read short stories and listened to the same stories at the same time. After listening, I repeated the sentences aloud. Sometimes I repeated one sentence several times. Slowly, something changed. The words began to sound familiar. I could recognize them more quickly when I heard them. I could also say them more naturally. Reading was helping my eyes, listening was helping my ears, and speaking was helping my mouth. All three skills were working together. This is why reading and listening together can be so useful. Imagine you are reading a simple story about a man going to work. You see the sentence, "He left the house at 7 o'clock." At the same time, you hear someone saying the sentence. Now you see the words and hear the pronunciation. Your brain can connect the written form with the spoken form. Later, when you see the sentence again, you may remember how it sounded. When you hear it again, you may remember how it looked on the page. These connections can make English easier to remember. You do not need difficult material for this practice. In fact, simple stories are excellent. Choose a story that is easy enough for you to understand. Read the story while listening to the audio. If you do not understand every word, that is okay. Focus on the general meaning. Listen to how the words sound together. Notice where the speaker stops. Notice which words sound stronger. Then listen again. The second time may feel easier because your brain already knows the story. Another useful method is to read aloud. Reading aloud means using your voice while you read. Instead of reading silently, speak the sentences. This can feel strange at first, especially if you are alone. But it is very useful. When you read aloud, you are not only looking at English. You are also listening to your own voice. You can hear the words as you say them. This creates another connection in your memory. For example, read this sentence aloud. I want to improve my English every day. Say it slowly. Then say it again at a natural speed. Then close your book and try to say it from memory. You have now practiced reading, speaking, listening, and remembering. You can also change the sentence. Say, I want to improve my speaking every day. Or, I want to improve my listening every day. Now you are using the same structure with your own ideas. This is one of the best ways to make English useful. Do not simply memorize sentences. Use them. If you read the sentence, I am tired today, say it when you are actually tired. If you read, I am hungry, use it when you are hungry. If you read, I need some water, say it when you need water. When a sentence becomes part of your real life, it can be much easier to remember. I remember doing this with simple English phrases. When I learned a new phrase, I tried to use it during the day. Sometimes I talked to myself. Sometimes I imagined a conversation. It did not matter that I was alone. My goal was to make the English active. If I learned, what are you doing? I would imagine asking someone that question. If I learned, I am going to the market. I would say it when I was actually going somewhere. Slowly, English became more natural. Another powerful technique is shadowing. Shadowing means listening to a speaker and repeating what the speaker says, usually with very little delay. You listen to a sentence and then copy the speaker. This is useful because you hear the sentence and immediately use it. You can use short stories, simple videos, or English lessons. Choose something that is not too difficult. Listen to one sentence. Pause if necessary. Repeat it. Then continue. For example, the speaker says, "Today is a beautiful day." You repeat, "Today is a beautiful day." Then the speaker says, "I want to go outside." You repeat, "I want to go outside." You are practicing the sound, rhythm, vocabulary, and sentence structure. You are also helping your memory because you are actively producing the English. You do not need to shadow for 1 hour. Start with 2 or 5 minutes. Choose a short section and repeat it several times. The goal is quality, not quantity. If you practice for 5 focused minutes every day, you can build a strong habit. Over time, you can increase the practice if you want. Another helpful idea is to record yourself. After reading a story, record yourself telling the story in your own words. Then listen to the recording. You may notice words you forgot. You may hear sentences that are unclear. You may notice that you speak too quickly. Do not feel embarrassed. The recording is there to help you. Try again. Each recording can become a small step toward improvement. You can also compare your voice with the original speaker. Yes. If you are using an audio story, listen to one sentence. Then record yourself saying the same sentence. Listen to both. Do not worry about sounding exactly like the speaker. Focus on clarity. Can you hear all the important words? Are you saying the sentence naturally? Is your pronunciation understandable? This kind of practice can make reading and listening more connected. Another important point is that listening can help you remember how words are pronounced. Sometimes, English spelling can be confusing. A word may not sound exactly the way a beginner expects. When you listen while reading, you can connect the letters with the sounds. This can make vocabulary easier to recognize later. When you meet the same word in another story, you may recognize it faster because you have already heard it. You can also listen to the same story several times. The first time, just listen and understand the general idea. The second time, read along with the speaker. The third time, pause and repeat important sentences. The fourth time, try to listen without looking at the text. This creates a simple learning cycle. You are using the same story in different ways. Imagine you have a 5-minute English story. On Monday, you listen to it. On Tuesday, you listen while reading. On Wednesday, you repeat important sentences. On Thursday, you tell the story yourself. On Friday, you listen again without reading. By the end of the week, the story may feel very familiar. Many words that seemed new on Monday may feel easy on Friday. This is a much better way to learn than listening to a different difficult story every day. Feck. New material is useful, but familiar material is also important. Familiar stories give your brain time to notice details. The first time you may focus on the meaning. The second time, you may notice pronunciation. The third time, you may notice grammar. The fourth time, you may notice vocabulary. Repetition gives you more opportunities to learn. You can also use songs, but choose simple songs if you are a beginner. Listen to the song while reading the lyrics. Try to understand the meaning. Then, sing along. Singing can make phrases easier to remember because rhythm and melody can create strong connections. You do not need to sing perfectly. The purpose is to enjoy English and repeat useful language. Another fun method is to act out what you read. If the story says someone is opening a door, pretend to open a door. If someone is sitting down, sit down. If someone is surprised, make a surprised face. This may sound like a game, but it can help connect language with action. When you combine words with movement, the story becomes more active in your mind. You can also practice conversations from stories. Suppose two people are talking. One person says, "Where are you going?" The other says, "I am going to the store." Read both parts aloud. Then close the book and act out the conversation yourself. You can even imagine another person answering. This gives you speaking practice and helps you remember the phrases. Another important habit is to speak English. After reading, not only during reading, when you finish a story, give yourself 1 or 2 minutes to talk. Tell yourself what happened. Say what you liked. Talk about your favorite character. Explain the lesson. You can say, "I liked the story because it was simple. The main character worked hard. At first, he had a problem, but he did not give up." This is excellent practice. You can also ask yourself questions and answer them aloud. For example, who was the story about? Then answer, "It was about a young man named Alex." What did he want? He wanted to learn English. What did he do? He practiced every day. This connects the method from Chapter 2 with today's method. You ask questions, remember the answers, and say them aloud. Do not worry about grammar perfection during this activity. If you make a mistake, continue. Later, you can correct it. The most important thing is to make your brain produce English. Speaking from memory is different from reading from a page. It requires more mental effort, and that effort can help you remember. You can also use a simple 3-step method every time you read. First, read the story silently and understand it. Second, read it aloud and listen to yourself. Third, close the story and tell it in your own words. If there is audio, you can add listening before or after the reading. This creates a complete practice routine. For example, imagine you are reading a story about a girl named Sarah. First, read the story silently. Make sure you understand the main idea. Then read it aloud. Pay attention to pronunciation. If there is audio, listen and repeat. Finally, close the story and say, Sarah wanted to improve her English. She started reading every morning. At first, she did not understand many words, but she continued practicing. After some time, she became more confident. You have now used the story in several ways. Another useful technique is to listen without looking at the text after you have already read it. This is important because real conversations do not come with subtitles or written sentences. When you listen without the text, you challenge your brain to recognize the sounds directly. At first, you may understand less. That is normal. Listen again. You may recognize more the second time. You can slowly reduce your dependence on the written text. First, read and listen together. Then listen with the text only when you need help. Later, listen without the text. This gradual process can help you become more comfortable with spoken English. Remember that your goal is not to understand every single word. Focus on the main meaning. If you understand 70 or 80% of a simple story, that can be enough for practice. You can return to difficult parts later. Do not stop every few seconds to look up a word. Too many interruptions can make listening tiring. Another helpful habit is to repeat useful phrases instead of only individual words. Suppose you learn the word ready. You can learn phrases such as, "Are you ready?" "I am ready. Get ready." These phrases are easier to use in real conversations. When you read them in a story and then say them aloud, they can become more natural. You can also create your own mini conversations using the phrases you read. If the story contains, "What happened?" you can ask yourself that question and answer it. If the story contains, "I don't know," use it when imagining a conversation. This turns reading material into speaking material. The important lesson is simple. Your eyes, ears, and mouth can work together. Your eyes read English. Your ears hear English. Your mouth speaks English. Your brain connects all three. When you use these skills together, you create more connections with the language. You do not need expensive tools or complicated lessons. A simple English story and your own voice are enough. If you have audio, use it. If you do not have audio, read aloud and listen to yourself. You can practice anywhere. You can practice in your room, while walking, or during a quiet part of your day. Make it a small daily habit. Choose one short story, read it, listen to it, say it, retell it. Repeat the useful phrases. Do this every day. You may notice that the words become easier to recognize. You may notice that you can speak with less hesitation. You may notice that you remember stories for longer. These are signs that your practice is working. So remember, today's lesson. Do not keep English trapped on the page. Take it off the page and put it into your ears and your voice. Read English. Listen to English. Speak English. Retell what you read. Use the words in your real life. The more ways you use the language, the stronger your connection with it can become. Thank you for joining me on this journey about how to remember everything you read in English. I hope these 7 chapters have given you simple ideas that you can use every day. Remember, reading is not a race. You do not have to finish the most pages. You simply need to understand, remember, and use what you learn. Keep reading, keep listening, keep speaking, keep reviewing, keep imagining. Most importantly, keep believing in yourself. Your English is growing every single day, even when you cannot see the progress. If you enjoyed this lesson, please like this video, subscribe to the channel Nob, and share it with another English learner who wants to improve. And tell me in the comments. What are you reading in English today? What new word or sentence did you remember? Your answer may inspire another learner. Thank you for being here. Keep learning, keep practicing, and keep moving forward. One page at a time, one word at a time, one sentence at a time. Your English journey continues, and your best progress may be just one more page away.